Hello everyone, my name's Steve Denby and we're just about to get started. I've been asked to talk today to you about the future of digital transformation, in particular the concept of a services gateway, which is something that's emerging in our marketplace. So we've put some slides together just to talk you through how we see that and how we feel we can help with your transformation journey. Okay. Please do feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can use the chat feature to do this, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the slides. Okay, so first of all, where do we start? Well, the idea being that everything is so connected now, and we all embrace the internet over the last 20 years, that so much that our lives revolve around being connected to services, data, applications, and the like. The services gateway concept starts with the idea that you can springboard from that internet connectivity to access services from providers like us, but also new emerging service providers like software as a service and public cloud offerings. Node 4, as an organisation, has historically run and owned data centres and provided connectivity around the UK. That gives us a great pedigree to build our own network, which is this circle you can see in the middle of the screen here. And from there, we are talking about offering customers a gateway, which is a concept. It's based around connectivity to begin with, on the basis that once you're connected to our environment, we can offer you many different services, not just things that we provide from our data centers, but other providers as well. So what I'll be talking about today is how you can blend this into a hybrid setup to get the most out of what is on offer to you. But it all does start with connectivity. And you will see on the left-hand side there the various different methods of connecting in. Sort of starting with your headquarters or head office, and obviously the more services that you move outside of your buildings, the more important that connectivity is. So what we tend to talk about here is private connectivity rather than just putting internet connections in. We talk about MPLS tails and those little black dots that are terminating on the edge of our circle there, the Node 4 circle. That shows you that it's a private connection into our environment. Of course, once you're attached to that services gateway, we can present services and other connections out to other providers, including centralized internet breakout, as you'd expect. Same goes for branch offices. You may have somewhere between sort of 5 and 80 people in a branch office, and resiliently connecting at that point is very, very important. So those little black dots will have typically 2 connections, maybe one fiber, maybe one FTTC with 2 different routers configured in an active-passive setup. So once you've got that concept that your services and your data and your key applications might be outside of your building, it's absolutely paramount that you get a resilient connection in and that it's managed. Someone's looking after that router and managing it. And that's historically what Node 4 have been very, very good at. When you move down to small offices, home offices, or sort of micro offices, or there may be offices that are attached to a manufacturing facility or some kind of heavy plant, but they're still just as important. They need to be connected to the same applications that the rest of the business is. They will occasionally not have access to a private connection. So in that scenario, we would connect them to the internet and then tunnel through the internet using a VPN into that services gateway. But the common theme here, as you'll see, even with the mobile clients, is that they're all connecting in over that private network eventually into that services gateway, so that they can access various things that are on offer, including what's in our environment. So we've got our logo here as a representation of what we offer, and I'll go into that in more depth in just a second. But then we've got other offers now from the public cloud providers. These are just 2 of them, the 2 largest ones. We'll talk about others in a second. But what's key to understand here is that within our data centers, we have cross-connected diversely into other providers to provide our customers with choice. So it's not just about Node 4 services, and that's really what the services gateway is all about. It's about measuring your workloads, measuring what runs your business, those applications, and working out where they belong from a best fit point of view, and using partner services from someone like us to put them in the right place and leverage some of the cost savings that might be available to you in those scenarios. What does that mean practically, though, and what do you do about all of the legacy stuff? Because obviously there is a great blend of applications. You may have hardware of different age and type. You may have applications you've developed in-house yourself that you're not looking to replace right now, but you know at some point you want to redevelop those so that they can run, perhaps in Azure or Amazon. And that's really part of what that whole digital transformation messaging is about. So when we talk about what's on offer and how this begins to work, I'll just drop down this extra slide here. Within our environment, and what Node 4 provide is a software-defined network, and this is something that's in a lot of the media at the moment, and so it's in the IT press. Ours is based on Cisco ACI, and what does software-defined mean? Typically, it means we have a very secure way of carving up a network now that's free of human error, so we can build contracts between devices on a network rather than having to manually go in and create lots of little subnets. So when we talk about what does that mean for customers, well, really, once you're just plugged into our services gateway and we've given you a port on that ACI network, you can access a whole suite of things from our environment, and you can also take pieces of each service and make them relevant to each other. So I can walk through an example here. Lots of customers we talk to have legacy hardware. They can't yet detach themselves from that. It's been on site for a couple of years. They've got investment in it and they're sweating that asset. So as a colo provider, we're able to say, well, that's not a problem. We can move that into a rack for you. We can put an ACI cable into that rack, and from that hardware, we can provide access to other services. Now that might be backup as a service, it could be DR, it could be a connection out to Azure or Amazon Glacia. I'll talk a bit more about that later on, about why you might want to do that. But the key point is that it can see, we can take the old and we can put it in an environment where it can see the new, and you can then build a hybrid solution where they complement each other, and you can gradually migrate over time. So it's not a big bang, sort of what they call a forklift move. You're not trying to move everything in one go. You're not trying to put it all into one public cloud provider, because that really isn't practical, and quite often the costs can be quite scary. So if we move across this page here, you're then into this little cloud icon with the arrow. What we're doing here is this is a cloud platform that Node 4 have invested in, and this is designed to allow our clients to procure in a very similar way to they always have done in terms of the same resource. So whereas you normally typically go out and buy server equipment, you might buy some storage or some networking hardware. In this layer here, we're providing infrastructure as a service, but in a very, very flexible manner. So we've built best of breed using Cisco equipment and NetApp and the like, and VMware. We've built a platform that allows you to consume compute and storage and networking as a service on a pay-per-month basis. Right the way from the larger requirements, where we're building individual private cloud environments for clients that are discrete and managed as such, through to dedicated resource, such as isolating an individual blade within our very large farm of blades for a particular client, and including trays of disk. But the real power, I guess, is the idea that you can rent just CPU and RAM per gig per month, and blend that using this ACI network. You can then blend that through other consumption. So if you've got a co-location contract and you've got some hardware in there and you're running out of space, one of the things that we can do on the right hand side over here, you will see that we've got various tiers of storage. Well, you can pipe some storage right into that co-location contract, and so that's that hardware, that legacy hardware. You don't have to go and spend more money on that or upgrading it. If you're sweating that asset and it's nearly out of space, you can either move some old data off onto one of our storage tiers, or you can present maybe even improve things. You can present some SSD, nice fast storage, into that legacy hardware and maybe speed things up or solve a performance issue. And again, you can buy that by the gig. We even have at the top there on that storage as a service offering IOPS guaranteed storage, which means that rather than just talking about capacity and vague performance, performance that we can trust but isn't specific, that IOPS and that sort of tier -1, if you like, is IOPS specific. So we can say, right, we're going to guarantee a certain number of IOPS to that particular piece of storage, and it could be 100 gig or 20 terabytes, doesn't matter. You're always going to have 4,000 IOPS for that database. So what hopefully I've demonstrated there is that there is a suite of things that Node 4 offer, all via a software-defined network that can complement what you've been doing in the past, and you can run your virtual infrastructure or even physical if you take dedicated resource from us, from our equipment. You don't have to own anything, and you can pay by the month. So what does that mean when you talk about blending that with what else is on offer in the marketplace? Well, this comes into what's happened in the last 5 years, and we've seen a significant rise in the number of services on offer from the likes of Amazon in particular, and then Azure, right the way through from similar complementary infrastructure as a service services through to some very quite clever things now where they're running sort of database services as a service. They quite famously also offer compute by billing by the minute and by the hour, which can be very advantageous to people that have written applications that take advantage of that. So for instance, if you're an online retailer or if you've got an e-commerce site and you run a promotion, you might find that your traffic on your website is going to peak to a point where you can't predict. So the more successful it is, the more resource you need, the more servers you need to take care of those customers and make sure that they get a great experience on that e-commerce site. And the best place for some of those things to live, those front-end customer-facing pieces that are what we call hyperscale, is places like Amazon and Azure, because you can switch them on, you can replicate your servers very, very quickly, and that's really where we add some value. So we can help customers build automation tools that allow your applications, when developed properly in those environments, to automatically scale and scale down again, to take advantage of this per hour, per minute, and in some cases what's coming is per second billing. That makes it very, very easy to deliver a great experience to your customer and control your costs, so that when the till's ringing, your costs will go up in line with your revenue, and when they all go to bed and it starts to get a bit quieter, then your costs come back down again. And that model is right for certain things, but you certainly wouldn't try and push everything that your business does into that model, because, as we all know, most workloads are fairly static. So making good use of that is something that we help you with, and we can connect, again, the old with the new, including that infrastructure as a service. So one of the key things about our N4 Cloud platform is that we have the provision to provide those storage tiers that I was talking about earlier into some of these public cloud providers. So we can publish storage space up to Amazon or Azure, and you can keep your data within a data center that you visited and you know where it is, and it's sovereign, definitely in the UK, and you can process that data, whether it be providing a web front-end application, you're probably providing content as a service to a customer, or maybe you're just doing business analytics and you just want your monthly 3-day report engine that runs to do that number crunching in a Microsoft Azure footprint, where you can switch it off automatically afterwards and just pay for it for those 2 or 3 days. So lots of options and choice there, and I think really that's probably the key thing about Services Gateway, is that the idea is that you have the choice, that one size doesn't fit all. Quite key to understand. And then we can talk a little bit about not just the public cloud providers and what they've been doing, but some very specific sort of software as a service functionality that they're beginning to offer. Now, Salesforce has been around a long time, and it's there because they are a software as a service provider. They were born in the cloud, so to speak. They've only ever provided a product really that has been accessed by a web browser. There are others, Salesforce's CRM, and it's developing into a developer community where other functionality, such as order processing, is becoming available on that platform. But other products like NetSuite, again, a very mature product, has been available via a browser for a very long time, and others are following. So a lot of the big software providers and software houses now are starting to move in that direction. Why is that relevant? Well, again, you privately connecting to these things is the way of delivering quality. So if you have several hundred users working out of your buildings and you want them to have a great experience because you want them to stay working for you and you want them to get more done every day and to enjoy doing it, then allowing them to access that via the public internet is a bit like putting an envelope in the mail with a postcode on it and hoping it gets there. Every packet of data you put out there, it's just going to find its way eventually, but there's no real guarantee on the speed, and every now and then one gets lost. When we put a private connection into one of these providers, it's more like sending that envelope on a point-to-point motorcycle courier. So it's definitely going to get there, and there's going to be a signature at the end with a check that it's actually received. So that quality improves things like the quality of voice solutions and data application speed. If you're doing any kind of desktop as a service or VDI type technology, all of those things improve when we can see both ends of the equation. So that's why private connectivity is very important, and the way we're assisting clients is, for instance, in areas where we see customers buying access to these applications en masse, and we have a good example is we do a lot of work with the insurance industry. There is an application that's important to them, very much like Salesforce is important to other people, called Acturis, and we privately peer with that application. So we have diverse connections in 2 different data centers to the Acturis platform, and when those clients access that software application from their buildings, that packet doesn't go anywhere near the public internet. That data traffic goes to and from Acturis on a privately routed network managed by us and looked after properly. So there's clear advantage. Other things that are emerging, obviously Microsoft are pushing heavily on things like Dynamics 365. If you've never seen that before, that's an evolution of their CRM product, and they've acquired accountancy products in recent years. And they're beginning to turn that into a Salesforce-esque type offering. And again, you can privately connect to that via our connections to Microsoft Azure. Good example from Amazon's side is that they have a very, very low-cost storage platform called Glacia. The SLAs on getting your data back are quite wide, so you wouldn't want to try and get anything back in a rush. But the idea being is that you put the data there because you have to keep it, but you won't be accessing it unless you really, really have to. Now, rather than keeping that on expensive storage that either you own or paying us to do that on our platform, where there's a price performance consideration, this is non-performance storage, quite literally offline. And what we're able to do with clients now is help you manage your data back through the life cycle to the point where maybe after 2 or 3 years where you no longer need it online, you can then start to push that by writing chunks of it into Glacia and leaving it there on the safe knowledge that it's there if you need it, but you really won't be going back to it unless you really have to. So those are all the core services, and that's really what runs most people's businesses. You've got these core applications that provide that triangle of the people, the application, the data. And what we're saying here is the data doesn't necessarily need to be right next door to the application, and the people certainly don't need to be next door to either of the other two. So we can connect them all to the services gateway and allow you to migrate from where you have been in the past into this new world where eventually you may develop services that take advantage of some of these public cloud providers. But all of that is great. There are a few hiccups and stumbling blocks along the way, as you'd imagine, and so let's just talk about some of those. And that's this little blue square here in the middle, which is the hosted services. Because before you start moving your applications and your data, you really have to consider that your legacy backup technology, your DR policy and your firewalling and everything is typically built around your previous stack of equipment, and that might mean that everything's done in-house. It might mean that you've got some racks somewhere in a data center, but you'll have one set of that stuff, and you might be managing it yourself. You may have outsourced that management, but the key thing is that it doesn't scale well when you want to start moving some of that data into, for instance, Microsoft Azure. So as soon as you do that, you've broken your old backup policy. So something that's quite important is to pay attention to getting your backup and your DR strategies in place early to support this kind of model. So that's something that we've got on offer. Anything you see within this environment, we have a way of backing it up or providing a DR solution for it in some fashion or shape. And that could be that you run things in a rack with us or on our platform and DR that or back it up into a public cloud provider. a bit like we were talking about with Glacia, or it could be you run things in one of the other providers and you want to fail that back, or even just back it up. But those are two key things that have to be dealt with quite early. And then I spoke earlier on about having sort of a centralized internet breakout. Now, why is that important? Well, we have diverse links. So for starters, it's much more resilient. So rather than having local internet breakout and hairpinning all of that data through one site, we can bring that back into our core, and we have multiple data centers, multiple uplinks to multiple carriers, and so we can afford to lose an entire building or several carriers and the internet connection will still keep working. Better than that, we've also got firewall services where, rather than acquiring physical firewalls, our N4 Protect product allows us to stand up a virtual firewall, which can coexist on two sites, even if you only have services running out of one. And that will run active passive, so that if we did happen to lose one of those firewalls, then the other one would take over. And again, if you happen to lose a site, then we can run services from the other site when you fail over. So that negates the need to own, manage, and learn the technology. We just stand the firewall up and we talk to customers about the rules they need configured, and we manage that for you. Then other complementary services on top of that, because you've got that centralized internet breakout, we can do things like put DDoS protection in, both from an application point of view, and this is becoming a growing threat now with phishing attempts and volumetric attacks. People are trying to take websites down on the basis that they can extract money from people in return for that sort of cyber terrorism, if you like. On the other hand, they are also doing things like that to create a diversion for the fact that they've already managed to compromise a network, and they're trying to extract data, which again they will use for malicious purposes. So DDoS is a key thing, and we offer both sides of that kind of intelligence. And if all your traffic is coming in and out of a centralized internet breakout, then we are able to protect that. Other things we're able to do is, rather than waiting for that attack to come, we can do things like our N4 Threat Detect service, which allows us to effectively tap the internet connection that you're using within our environment, and we can take every packet of data that comes in and out, and we can pull it across into a log file and then analyze that in what's called a SIEM. N4 Threat Detect is a SIEM as a service that allows us to manage and watch the traffic hitting your environment from the outside world. And what we're looking for is the tells, the things that may give away the fact that someone is going to create a DDoS attack, or someone is trying to find a way through your firewall rules, or your DMZ that's got your e-commerce front end site in. That kind of thing is typically preceded by certain levels of activity. If we suddenly get lots of connections coming from a country you don't do business with, then we're able to flag it to you and say, does this look right? If not, we can maybe start to put some rules in to drop that traffic and block traffic coming from that area of the world. So getting ahead of those things and putting a layer of protection in. Other complementary services that sort of surround that now are things like our SIP platform for telephony. So we can connect either your own telephony switches to that SIP platform, or we have a Cisco HCS collaboration platform that does full voice services as well as instant messaging and video conferencing, and we can host call center type services for those that need it, all from within this one services gateway within our own buildings, and it's managed for us. Over the top of all that, there are varying degrees of managed services. We have different operate levels, right the way from providing just the infrastructure itself up to the operating system, or we can support the operating system and then above it as needed, and we're quite happy to be flexible and tailor those services for individual need, client by client. So, in summary, and to just recap on where I started, connectivity is the first rung on the ladder, if you like. You need to have a good, solid, resilient connection to a services gateway, and then choice is the second real thing to understand. What can you access from that provider, and what does that services gateway offer you? Where are you going to be in 5 years' time, and what does your journey look like? The more choice you have within that environment, the more likely you are to be able to get more done quicker, and also leverage some of the key features that are beginning to appear within some of these providers. Quite literally every month we're seeing different things appear in the menu on both Microsoft and Amazon that complement lots of the things that we offer our clients, and we're very keen for those customers to embrace that, and we provide the relevant support. So we're going to go to some questions now. If you've got any questions, please ask them. If there's a chat feature within the WebEx browser, if you want to just type your question in there, and we'll do our best to answer it.
Give it a minute or so.
So we have one question, and that was about security and the central internet breakout I was just talking about. And it's a case of, well, how do you secure the devices that might be connecting to that when they might be on and off the network? That's a good question. So the answer to it is actually around endpoint security and making sure that every device that you have that has access to your corporate network has a client on the end of it that is managed and locks down that device and is preventing it bringing anything insecure into your network or opening up connections into your network that you don't want. It's something that we do provide as part of a managed endpoint service, as an extension of what we do with our N4 threat detect service that I mentioned a minute ago about looking for inbound traffic that could be a problem. That's all run from our SOC, Security Operations Centre in Nottingham, and that same team have a way of putting an agent onto endpoint devices and watching what's happening. So they're alerted if someone does click on something they shouldn't have done. Then we can catch that, we can isolate that machine, we can stop it spreading. So a good example would be something like the malware that has been in the press recently, where it's encrypted data for people like I think the NHS had a slight problem with that, and there's plenty of people in the corporate sector that have run into the same trouble. And it's called ransomware. But having good quality endpoint protection is how you protect yourself against that. Okay, we're going to bring this to a close now. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I hope you did find it useful. If you do think of any questions afterwards, please do get in touch. And if you've got any questions around how you can begin your journey into migrating towards a service gateway concept, please talk to us about our cloud readiness assessment. We do have tools that will help you measure your environment. They are very competitively priced, and they will give you a lot of the detail you need to know and to make decisions on where best to place your applications and data. So get in touch and talk to one of our sales team about exactly how you can start that journey. Otherwise, thanks again, and I hope to speak to you soon.